So, welcome back to Future You. We're going to bring in another guest in a minute. But before we do, Michael, I really wanted to get your reaction to a couple of points that Lev made. And one of the interesting things he said was, that there's this like low hanging fruit of using AI in the research function, which frankly, we haven't really talked a lot about when we talk about AI. Again, AI is so focused on what happens in the classroom. So, I wanted to get your take on that, on the research function of using AI.
Well, first, I love that he brought that up, Jeff, because research is one of those core functions of certain universities. And it's something that we don't talk nearly enough about. We talk about the student experience, but universities are an important contributor to society through the research they do, particularly at a place like Arizona State that contributes so much valuable research, so many fields important to Arizona and its local environment, but increasingly globally for a place like ASU as well. And I thought his points were really good ones. I thought I'd bring up, Jeff, just something from back in May, actually, that Ethan Mollick at Wharton actually wrote about this, and we'll link to it in the show notes. But he framed his piece around a crisis, as he put it in research, that predates AI. And the crisis was this: the rapidly declining productivity and pace of innovation in research. And that he measured everything from cancer research to agriculture. And his take was that AI is simultaneously assisting, but also exacerbating this challenge in four distinct ways. And I just thought I'd mention two of them here. First, he was pointing out, obviously, it's sort of the corollary to what Lev was talking about. You can do a lot more writing of applications. Well, the pace of writing your research up can also go up significantly with AI. Now, that might not be good writing, but the pace is increasing, right? Either way. And here's the tension with that. Academic journals and the peer review process, they're already taking a really long time to get the flood of papers they have coming in vetted, go through the peer review process, get out to publication. We're measuring this in years, sometimes up to a decade. I suspect research you've done, depending on your field, might even be out of date by the time it actually appears. And now you imagine with the pace of writing potentially increasing, well, all of a sudden we're going to have even more things coming at our doorstep. And so how will journals and faculty who do peer review deal with this? Well, Ethan says here again, AI actually can help with peer review. It can do some of the work. But that then, of course, raises a whole bunch of integrity questions and how do we trust and so forth. So that's the first thing. The second thing, and again, Lev talked about how faculty can use AI to increase the speed of research of the applications on the front end. But we can also use AI on the back end to not just write academic writing faster, but actually make it more accessible to a wider audience. Now, we know that academic writing is, I'm going to use the word dense to be charitable. And we also know that vanishingly few people read most papers. Part of that has to do with the narrowness in some cases of what people are researching, but some of it also has to do clearly with how they're written. And so I think a question is, can AI help make the writing clearer? I think the answer is a clear yes there, Jeff. One other section just on my mind, because I thought a lot of the administrative functions, Jeff, that he mentioned where AI can make an impact are those we've actually seen at institutions like ASU for some time. They didn't feel new to me. It just seems like we're seeing an improvement of those now. Better helping students get answers to questions, for example, and improving the student experience more generally so that, as you always like to point out, a student doesn't have to physically go to 4 or 5 different places on campus to actually get an answer to something that in any other service industry, they just ask the chatbot and get a simple answer.
Yeah, Michael, so many good points from you and Lev on that front. And one of the other things he talked about that I know really kind of sparked your interest was in how, as a community, they decide which of these hundreds of proposed projects that they got around AI to actively support.
Yeah, and I was really glad I asked the question because I learned a lot from his answer. And I think the point that he made, the projects, they're coming in, like they're very different types of projects. He mentioned this notion of time horizons, right? Horizon 1, 2, and 3 framework. For those that don't know, basically Horizon 1 projects that these projects are more incremental in nature. They also have faster timelines. They're less risky. They're more of a sure thing. Horizon 3 are sort of those moonshots, right? Transformational projects, long timelines, much riskier, probably a much bigger level of investment as well. And Horizon 2 sort of sits in between. And what I liked about what Lev said is that one of the first things you do here is have a faculty committee to help not just filter, hey, we're going to do this project versus that one, but actually just look at all the proposals and bucket them into these 3 different buckets so that you're not comparing a Horizon 1 proposal that's super small, incremental, costs maybe a couple $100,000 versus a Horizon 3 one that may end up costing several $1,000,000 before you're done. And because they have totally different levels of potential impact, risk, needed resources, it just doesn't make sense to pit them against each other. It's very difficult to say, how do I judge this versus that? And ideally, and I imagine from his comments that ASU does this, you'd say, look, and I'm just going to make up a hypothetical here, but we want to have the capacity to support, say, 150 Horizon 1 projects this year, 75 Horizon 2 projects, and 35 beginnings of Horizon 3 projects. And so we'll take all the proposals that are Horizon 3, and we're only going to judge them against the other Horizon 3 one to figure out what are the 35. The point is, we don't know exactly what we're going to do ahead of time. Our faculty from the grassroots, they have great ideas. We'll figure out what to do based on what they submit, but we are going to commit to a deliberate strategy in terms of the mix of innovation and the percentages in each of those buckets, so that as a university, we make sure we're sort of hitting our strategic plan milestones, and we've got a nice mix of those incremental year-to-year things, but also those bigger moonshots, and we're prepared to actually support them with the level of resources, processes, team structures that they're going to need over the long run if they really work out. And yeah, so I think it's a really important thing that they're doing there, Jeff.
Yeah, and I like, Michael, how you laid out this kind of deliberate strategy of mixing innovation types, because I don't think that necessarily happens. In fact, I don't think it happens at all in most higher education institutions. Most institutions have one Uber strategy, and they say, okay, the window on the strategy is going to be 5 or 7 years, and everything fits in that one bucket. So I think this is really good advice on how to design innovation, particularly around AI. And probably a good place to leave this conversation with Lev. And while Lev talked about the low-hanging fruit of research, Michael, one place in higher ed where I see a lot of action right now around AI, where it is really where there's, as we all know, a real pressure point for colleges and universities, and that's enrollment and probably the student journey in general, right? The retention and engagement of students. And to help us sort that out, we're pleased to welcome Ashley Budd to the show. Ashley, I've known for probably about 10 years now. She's a consultant and full-time marketing director at Cornell University who writes and speaks about marketing and digital innovation, mostly in the advancement and development sector. She's co-author of a new book called Mailed It, a guide to crafting emails that build relationships and get results. Ashley, welcome to Future You.